Welcome everybody. This is the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform weekly community call. Typically with Microsoft speakers, today we actually have a special storyline, and I'll explain that when we go to the agenda. It is June 6th, 2023, and my name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a Principal Product Manager in Microsoft 365 platform areas. Now, in the agenda, we have a typical setup for recapping again on all of the assets, all of the news, all of the upcoming events within the first 10 to 15 minutes. We'll take a together mode picture within the themes, so publish that in social media as a GIF later on, and then we go to the actual starts of the day. So we'll start with Marc Windle, who's going to talk about introduction to Microsoft Syntex Repository Services. This is continuity from the last week, so we kind of evolve a bit on that storyline, going a bit more detailed on Microsoft Syntex Repository Services. And then Luca Bandinelli is going to talk about the bot framework part, Viva Connection card. So explaining what it is, how to get started, and what's the benefit. What does it actually mean? Is it replacing SharePoint framework? Answer is no. I'm spilling the beans. Fun. We're going to talk about that one. And yes, Luca, I can see the video. And then the last is Paolo. We actually partnered closely with Paolo for our Microsoft 365 Las Vegas keynote and also our European collaboration keynote, which was designed. So the solution is designed by Microsoft, right, Paolo? But it's implemented primarily by Paolo, and we wanted to have Paolo to actually talk about extending the SharePoint framework app across the Microsoft 365. And this is the Contoso Retail scenario, which is, by the way, open source available for you. So the same keynote demo, what we've been using now for quite a few times, is available for you to take advantage. Great demo. It's a really easy to deploy to any tenant, and it looks awesome. So great for storytelling for those who are looking into pre-sales purposes and solutions. We'll get back to that as the final demo of today. Now, we have the typical set of assets which we have available. So we have the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community video channels. We have more than 40,000 subscribers. We publish one new video every single business day. So please do subscribe over there. All of our community call recordings and community demos and other stuff is getting published over there. We have our LinkedIn group for discussions and updates. This is basically a group, so you can actually share your own findings and ask questions in there as well. And then we have our MVP and Microsoft employees helping on within those questions. So relatively new thing, but it's growing quite fast as well. We do have also a lot of open source assets available, but as it might be a bit difficult to find the relevant asset or sample for you, we actually have these sample galleries, which are really designed to make your life easier. So if you're running into a deadlock situation, or you're looking into one technical solution or an example or innovation or inspiration, please take advantage of those sample galleries. There's a lot of samples available. And if you're wondering that there's too many URLs to remember, luckily all of these are getting aggregated to the aka.ms community home. So that should be an easy thing to remember. Now, we do also have our community calls, which you are on right now. So we do have community calls. You are on it. Surprise, surprise. Now, we have the weekly one, which is happening 8 a.m. every single Tuesday, except on a summer break. So we will be on a break in July. So from the last call will be on 27th of June, and then we will be back on 22nd of August. Last year, we were actually out until the 1st of September, but then people started being anxious about getting back to the calls. So this time, we start a bit earlier. We have a lot of monthly community calls, Power Platform, Microsoft Identity Platform, and Office Science. And then we have our bi-weekly series, which is basically every single Thursday, 7 a.m. Pacific time. It's either Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community call or Viva Connection and SharePoint community call, 7 a.m. every single Thursday, either one of those calls. These recurrent invites are all available from aka.ms community calls, and you can always catch up the agendas for the calls a week before, typically, from our meetup setup. So you can sign up for the meetup, and you will actually get an emails around when we publish the agendas. And then you can decide, do you want to be live within the call, or do you want to catch the recording afterwards from the YouTube? Now, I mentioned that a lot of these community calls are actually open for community demos. So the Tuesday one is with Microsoft demos. Then the Thursday ones and other calls are more for community demos. And we do welcome you to present in this course, because we want to see, for example, what kind of Syntex services you're using and building application on top of that. And then you can actually share that to others. Everybody learns. We as a Microsoft learn as well on how you're using our applications. So we do welcome demos across Power Platform, Craft, Teams, SharePoint Framework, whatever. Anything in Microsoft 365 or Power Platform is welcome to get shown in here. We do not welcome marketing and sales presentations, so be a bit more thoughtful on that. But please reach out or submit the form, and we'll get you queued up on the calls. We do have a lot of assets available for you to get started on Microsoft 365 development or Power Platform development, because it's all happening in Microsoft 365 or Microsoft Cloud. Anyway, you should register to Microsoft 365 Developer Tenant. It is a free program. You will get a free E5 Developer Tenant and a lot of assets, other assets available for you. And then there's a lot of free learning material available in Microsoft Learn. So please do take advantage of them. As part of that storyline of understanding what's possible, one way of keeping up on what's happening is our recurrent podcast and video blogs. So we do have our Microsoft 365 PMP Weekly happening every single week, except the summer break, which is coming as well for that one. We do have our Mondays at Microsoft with Caruana and Heather happening in LinkedIn as a live setup as well, bi-weekly on Mondays. We have the Power Platform Connections with David Warner and Hugo Bernier, and then which is a great show focused on Power Platform community and people explaining who the people are in that area. And then we have our Microsoft 365 Developer Podcast hosted by Jeremy Thake, Paul Schaffelin, or Aisha Buzz. And really cool show as well. Do subscribe on all of them. Really great stuff. I mentioned the samples already. We have now more than 1,600 samples for Microsoft and community from a one centralized location. Again, rather than making you to go to the different organizations in GitHub and trying to find the relevant sample for you, we try to push all of those samples available from a one centralized location. So you can just use the text box or search by the author name or search by the product title, so you easily find the relevant sample for you. So please do take advantage of this one, because it is the easiest way to stay up to date on samples which are available. 1,600 is a mind-blowingly big number. Now, as you find the sample, you might be wondering, what about now? I don't GitHub. What is this? How do I get started? What does it mean? I don't know. David, help me.
Holy cow, right? 1,600 plus samples. Wow. So yes, Sharing is Caring is a program that we belovedly started many moons ago, or should I say many moos ago? See what I did there? It is a program. Sounded like a Wookiee. So seriously, because it's all serious, it is a program we started many moons ago to provide assistance, hands-on guidance, in fact, in safe space opportunities. Now, we've had a lot of things going on in the community in the last few months, and some of these have not been scheduled. We appreciate everyone's patience. We are doubling down and getting volunteers involved. Many of you have reached out. We appreciate that, and we thank you. We're scheduling calls and getting that set up. I, in fact, am scheduling the actual sessions for some of these right now as we speak after this call. So please stay on the lookout at aka.ms/sharing is caring. These programs and these sessions provide hands-on guidance, and that means we get together in a Teams call. We walk you through how to accomplish things like using the PNP SPFx samples, contributing to GitHub, showing you how to navigate that landscape if it's unfamiliar to you. We understand the dates have been sparse lately, but we are looking and working on improving that. So thank you for your patience. Definitely reach out if you have any questions. If you've not gotten an invite for wanting to volunteer and help out, reach out to me. We had a lot of folks reaching out, so I want to make sure nothing got slipped through the cracks. So thank you all. aka.ms/sharing is caring. Vesa, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, David, on that one. And next, the news
at 11
from Channel 9. Sorry.
Wow, you guys are on fire this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whatever it is.
You know, I'm on a vacation.
Can I have a little bit
week,
of what you guys are getting? I need that.
Yes, thank you, Luca. Now, let's go to the events. So first of all, DC, June 12th to 16th, we have the 365 EduCon, and the 365 EduCon is also hosting Seattle later in August and Chicago later in October. Also in June, we have the European Power Platform Conference coming up in Dublin. If I can get the slides moving, there we go, on 20th to 22nd of June. A great opportunity also catching up on what's happening in the Power Platform side in a beautiful city. That's a great time to go to the Dublin as well. Now, in overall, we have a lot of community-driven and community-hosted events going across the world, so please do take advantage of them. A lot of these are free events organized by the individual community members locally, and a lot of them might be a bit bigger. So depending on the size, depending on location, depending on location and city and region, the size of the conference might be a 10 people to 200 people or even 1,000 people. But a lot of them are free to take advantage. Some of them are also hybrid, and they are also great opportunities for you to go and present, potentially if you want to get started on that presenting career as well. Now, Something. What's also is happening right now is the Microsoft Teams global hack. I'm just watching quickly the presenters. Do we have Gary or somebody doing the intros today? And the answer is no. So we have the Microsoft Teams global hack ongoing from June 1st to June 15th, and a great chance to win prizes. aka.ms HackTogether Teams is the URL to find out more. Basic idea here is that within these 2 weeks, you'll build a Microsoft Teams solution, either using Teams Toolkit, your Teams, or SharePoint Framework. You submit that solution to be available as a hack as part of the thing. You will get a free badge, and then the best and coolest solutions will also get other awards available. All of the details available at aka.ms HackTogether Teams. Now, last week we had a lot of also news available. It's interesting. 1 week after build, it's kind of a lot of news still. But I will actually not going to go through all of this news. But the key news here is, for example, the Syntex announcement. There's a SharePoint Framework 1.17.3 getting released. Viva Connection solution types are in app source. There's a lot of stuff in Microsoft Teams site. So there's an intelligence meeting recap in Teams Premium is now available. Super cool feature. I will add all of the news in the chat, and we will publish them part of the monthly, the community blog post summary as well. So those are on chat. So let's not spend too much time on covering all of them. Now, then let's actually do a quick recap on what's the new around the Teams platform updates, and Surbhi is going to cover this.
Thank you, Vesa. Hi, everyone. So we successfully launched the following features at Build. You have a good number of features such as Teams AI Library, which is a team-centric interface to GTP-based common language models. We have revamped the Get Started to include step-by-step guides that covers Team Toolkit version 5. We've also introduced Team Toolkit version 5, and Teams Toolkit version 4 will soon be deprecated. LiveShare SDK is now GA, so please go and try. You can co-watch, co-create, co-edit during meetings. We've also introduced geo-filtering, which allows you to select from available list of countries and communicate what's great about your app. Our design module has also been updated to include the latest from the Figma files. And finally, the deep link to meeting side panel, where you can open a deep link in a meeting side panel. So you please go through the content. If you have any feedback or suggestion, please post on aka.ms Teams platform feedback. The link is available in the footer. You could also configure to the RSS feed and get regular platform updates. Thank you, and over to you, Vesa.
Excellent. Thank you, Surbhi. On that one, a lot of cool capabilities across the Microsoft 365, not only on Teams, but a lot of these are obviously Teams specific as well. Now, let's go then to the group picture. So those who are willing, enable the video, and we will capture a GIF animation out of that, and we will share that within the social media. And so let's put this one in here. We do have 50 seats in a room, and it's pretty good, but then it went completely pixelated. Why is that happening? Now it's a bit better. Let's wait for a while still. I'm not recording. It's getting a bit better. We still have few seats in the room. Somebody is driving a car while being on this picture. That's really cool. And then he's gone. So a bit more. Few more seats. This is looking really good. We are filling in the whole room. It's a bit pixelated, unfortunately, but let's actually get that one still recorded. So I will put the recording on. 3, 2, 1, and let's do some hand waving, everybody. Everybody waving hand. David in the middle in orange is showing a great example. Awesome to have you on a call. A bit pixelated this time. No can do. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I will grab a GIF animation out of that. And then let's go to the actual stars of today. So we'll start with Marc with Introduction to Microsoft Syntex Repository Services Part 2. Luca Bandinelli is going to talk about what framework powered Viva Connection card. And then we move to Paolo to talk about how to build Microsoft Teams extension applications. And this is the Contoso Retail scenario. But Marc, let's jump on your screen. Right on schedule. This is cool.
Perfect. Thank you. My name is Marc Windle. I'm a product manager at Microsoft working on Syntex Repository Services. Today, we're going to go over some of the scenarios and features of Syntex Repository Services and get our hands on the actual APIs that make it work. So as Vesa mentioned last week, I introduced the product itself, but for those that maybe didn't see that, a quick overview here. It is a faster way for developers to build and manage full-featured file and document-centric applications. Right now, it's in private preview. I'm not going to explain all those details, but I recommend to go to that link there. There's a blog post that explains it in much more detail, aka.ms/syntex/repository build 23. But the real high-level overview is that it is a headless, API-driven, document-focused storage service. It's powered by SharePoint, so you get a whole bunch of superpowers there with built-in security compliance, collaboration with Office documents, and a whole lot more. I showed this diagram last week as well. It's a real high-level overview. Basically, Syntex Repository Services lets you write a custom application that can create containers, and those containers store content within an M365 customer. They're separate from SharePoint containers or SharePoint sites, OneDrive sites as well. And so those are totally different. You get your own containers that your app gets to create and own and control the experiences of. And all of that is done through Graph APIs. What I want to do now is show you another diagram, which is a deeper view that kind of gives you an overview of the anatomy of a Syntex Repository Services application. So I'll read this kind of top down, left to right. On the left side, you have a developer tenant, or we can also call it a partner tenant. That is where you create your application definition. The most important thing there is that you have an Azure Active Directory app registration, and that container type object, which defines your Syntex Repository Services app, has an app ID in it, billing info, and other settings. So then going on the right side, going kind of top down, your Repository Services app code actually uses Graph APIs to create containers within other M365 tenants. And I'm calling it a consuming tenant in there. You can create many containers in many different tenants. And so those tenants can be separate or they can be the same. So you can make a multi-tenant application, creating containers across many different consuming tenants and controlling the experiences of those and the content within them through your application. Or if you're writing an enterprise line of business app, those can be the same thing. So that diagram would be simplified. The developer tenant and the consuming tenant would become the same thing. Each container that you create has a container type ID that is really the definition of what app owns it and gets to control the experiences. And it points back to that app registration or the app definition that I called out before. Now, the other important takeaway here is that a container is really just a drive in Microsoft Graph. So you get an ID with a container, and you can treat that as a drive object within Microsoft Graph, and I'll show you that in the demos later. Getting into the permissions of it a little bit, and this will make more sense once we start calling the APIs. So in order to call these APIs within a consuming tenant, your tenant admin needs to grant these new permission scopes within Graph. You won't be able to see these yet. These are currently hidden because we're in private preview, but there are two scopes, or a scope and a role that is created. File storage container.selected that works with both delegated and application only auth. So you can create delegated calls against Graph APIs for these new APIs that I'll show you, or you can use it as app only auth as well. Now, a container object itself can be uniquely permissioned, and so you can define security boundaries of containers within your application. There are 4 roles here: reader, writer, manager, and owner, and you can assign users and groups to each of these roles to control who can access the content via your app in these containers. One thing to note, container permissions and the drive items within them, they are additive only. Familiar with SharePoint permissions, this is a slight difference. You can't break inheritance, so you can add permissions and share, but you can't break inheritance within containers. So with that, I'm going to do one more plug. If this product interests you, then sign up for the private preview. There's a link at the bottom there, aka.ms/repository preview, or you can hit that QR code and fill out the form and sign up for private preview. But now I'm going to get into showing you some hands-on demos. So for this, I'm going to open up Postman. If you're not familiar with it, it's a great tool for making requests to APIs. Here I've got a collection of API requests called Syntex Repository Services. I'm going to open that up, and there are 2 folders within here. One is delegated, one is application. I'm going to show you the delegated folder today, and we're going to make our API calls with app and user context. So when I click on the delegated, If those familiar with making calls on Graph, I'm going to get an access token. So using OAuth2, I'm going to use the auth code flow to get an access token. I'm providing a client ID and secret. So I'll click this to get an access token. All right, we have our token. I will tell Postman to use that on the requests within this folder. And I'm going to open up the containers folder. So here are the new APIs that come with Syntex Repository Services. And the first one that we'll use is create container. So here's the endpoint. It's on beta right now. Again, if you would like to use this, you will have to sign up for the private preview using that link that I mentioned before. The new endpoint is /storage/file storage/containers. And we'll make a post request to that endpoint with this payload here. I'm just giving it a display name, a description, and that all important container type ID that I mentioned before. So when I send that off, we should have our first Syntex Repository Services container. There you see, we created our first container object. So now I can get the container there. Again, it's just a GET request to that same endpoint. I'm providing a bunch of OData parameters so we can see some other properties of this object. So you can see here, we've got that container that we just created. There's a custom properties attribute that I'm going to show you a little bit more detail on later, as well as the permissions that I mentioned in the slide. Because I created this container with delegated auth, it automatically assigns the user context there to be an owner of that container. In this case, I'm signed in with the administrator account on my tenant. So now I'm going to show you how we can add permissions to this new container object. So we hit the /permissions endpoint on that container, and I'm going to assign Megan B as a reader on this container. I'll send that off. And you can see Megan has been added as a reader on here. And I'm actually going to update that permission because I would like Megan to be a writer instead. So I can take that permission ID that I just created and change the role from reader to writer. I'll send that off. And when it completes, Megan Bowen is now a writer on that container. And as I mentioned in the slides, you can add groups as members of these permission roles. So I will add the retail group to be a reader on this container as well. I'll send that request off. And there we go. Anybody that's part of the retail members group can now see content in this container. I mentioned custom properties, so I'll show you what those look like. You can set what are effectively key value pairs on containers. And it looks like that was getting custom properties. Sorry, I'm going to actually set custom properties in here. So this request, here's the payload. You can just do /custom properties and patch that. I've added 3 here. You can add many key value pairs. The key is URL path, for example, but that can be any string that you want. And then the value here is Northwind. So one other attribute that you get to, there are 2 types, so you can make them searchable or not. So here I've got 3 custom properties that I'm going to set. I'll send those off. And now we've got some custom properties on our new container. So when I go back and get that container object, you can see we've got a bunch more data in there. There are the custom properties that we've set. And here are all of the permissions. So you can see the admin is the owner of that container. The retail members group is the reader. And Megan Bowen is a writer on that container. So that's a quick tour of some of the container API endpoints. But as I mentioned, containers are really just drives in Graph. And so this container ID that you get, you can treat that as a drive ID in Graph. And so I'm going to close the containers folder, open up this new files folder here, and show you some of the existing Graph APIs that you might be familiar with to interact with this container as a drive object. So I passed that container ID, and now I'm using the existing 1.0 Graph endpoint to get that container as a drive object. So you might be familiar with that. You can get drive items on that container. I'll send that request off. You might be familiar with that one as well. And this one is just going to get an empty set because this is a brand new container and we haven't created any drive items in it. So I'm going to upload a file. The first thing I'm going to do is upload a PDF file in here. I've got this add slogans PDF document. We'll see that similar document as a Word document later. And there we go. We've got our first drive item in this container. Now I'm going to actually show you a cool feature that's built in to Syntex Repository Services containers. I'm going to get a preview link on this container. I can do that by hitting the /preview endpoint on that drive item. I don't need to pass any parameters, so I'll send that request off. And we have a preview link here. If I go over here and grab that link, I'm just going to copy it to my clipboard, open up a browser. You can see that built in, when this renders, you have the ability to preview PDFs right out of the box with content stored in Syntex Repository Services containers. Now I'm going to upload a video file as well. This might take a second. This file is a little bit larger. And this will upload this sample.mp4 video into this container. And assuming that works, it does take a couple of seconds because the video file is a little bit larger. I should be able to, again, create a preview link with that file that I just uploaded. And we can render and watch video files directly from a Syntex Repository Services container with a built-in player. So there we go. We have our file. I'm going to generate another preview link with that new file. There we go. I'll copy that new preview link URL into my clipboard, open up a new browser tab, paste it, and you can see built in, you've got video support streaming right out of the box with Syntex Repository Services containers. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to go back now and show you a little bit of the Office support. So I'll upload an Excel file in here. Once this request loads, let me just close that video window because it seems to be taking up some of my memory. I'll go back here. So we've got this amplified pricing Excel document. I'm going to send that off, upload a file, and again, we've got a new file in there. You can use the web URL property of that drive item object. I'm going to go in here and make a new browser tab, paste that in here, and right out of the box, you have Office Online support. You can view, edit, and co-author documents with Office Online right out of the box with those files stored in Syntex Repository Services containers. So I'll do the same thing with the PowerPoint file. Let that tab open up in Postman. I'll upload this PowerPoint document, send that request off, grab the web URL, open up a new browser tab for that, paste it, and we should see a rendering of this PowerPoint file. Again, this is open for view, edit, and co-auth, so we can co-author it as well. I can share it with other folks within this tenancy or even externally, and we can all collaborate on that document right there. I'll upload a Word file, open up that tab in Postman. Here's a Word file. I'll send that request off, upload a Word document, grab the web URL property here again, open up a new browser tab, paste that, and now we have the Word Office Online experience as well. So once this renders, I'm going to show you a couple more cool things right from within here. So I've got this add slogans document. I'm going to actually show you how you can comment in here. So I'm going to add a new comment. I'm going to say at Nestor, and we can people pick. I can mention somebody in here and say, can you please review? And then I will send that off. And if this document is not shared with Nestor, it's going to give me the share and notify experience. And so even though I haven't shared this document with Nestor, I can grant access directly from in there. And so you get @mentions, commenting, share and notify. Nestor's going to get an email there. You can click on that link, click and open up this document within Office Online and share and notify right as well. Another cool thing that you can do is your consuming tenant can set up sensitivity labels. I've already created one within this consuming tenant and called Project Blue. So you can apply sensitivity labels in here. So I'm going to apply that Project Blue sensitivity label to this document. And with that, you can get additional protections and things like that with existing sensitivity label capabilities like encryption and other capabilities that sensitivity labels offers. There's a lot more features than that. So there's e-discovery and audit support. So your consuming tenant can e-discover content within here, create e-discovery cases, and do search queries as well. And they can audit the contents like file access or updates and things like that. So that's it for me. Thank you very much for the time. And again, hit that link to learn more that I showed in the slides. I'll paste them in the chat as well, and hit that link to sign up for the private preview as well. Thank you for the time. And if there's any questions, hit the chat. And I'll be there.
Excellent. Thank you, Marc. Before you stop sharing, don't do that yet. Just want to have one question or one clarification, and you can say yes and no. So basically, there's a lot of questions related on, okay, so how is this different than manipulating files in the SharePoint? What is the advantage of doing this and all of that? The key here, and Marc, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just let's say phrasing what we were saying, rather than storing the files, for example, in Azure, you want to store the files in a customer tenant. So you can actually align on the compliance and security, and the files will never leave the customer tenant. Also, the difference than uploading the files to a SharePoint site is that you are in a application-specific storage, not in a SharePoint site-specific storage, which would get complicated on who has access on that site, how do you deal with those permissions, everything else. Consider this as a tenant-scoped storage per application. And then based on your application requirements, you can adjust the things. Good way of telling that? Just to recap.
Yep, exactly. And another key difference is this is consumption as well.
Yes, consumption-based. Good point. Absolutely. Now, the pricing, everything else, there was a lot of questions on that one. I think we'll publish more on those details later on, or we can reference that. But I think that's it for this one. Luca, let's jump on your site, and we're going to see bot-powered Viva connection cards.
So one slide and demo.
That's good.
Bot power ACES. Basically, what we did here, we wanted to be able to create an opportunity for people that already invested in bots, for Microsoft teams, let's say, that heavily invested in the bot framework, to be able to reuse existing investments and without having to switch and learn new technologies, because maybe they built their bots using C# or other kind of non-web-based techs. How do they basically use the same kind of investments and participate to the Viva Connections? So today, if you have something like that, what you have to do, you have to build your ACE using SharePoint framework and then create some sort of deep linking to your existing bot. Bot Power ACES give you the ability to avoid that and simply, for lack of better words, teach your bot how to speak Viva. So what we did was we worked with the bot framework team and we created new kind of actions that are part of the bot framework that are specifically for Viva. So now your bot can basically listen to these actions. The dashboard and the card will send these actions to the bot, and the bot can respond back using a declarative approach for the card view, or by setting the properties that you want to show in the card view, the card size, the template, etc. And for the quick view, sending the whole JSON, adaptive card JSON for showing the quick view. That also means that from the SharePoint framework standpoint, there is no client code needed. Actually, as a matter of fact, there is no client code at all. It's not that you don't need, but you may want to add it. No, you can't. Yeah, everything is in the bot itself. The only thing that you have to deploy in SharePoint is a package that is basically telling SharePoint that there is a new type of card that to surface in the card picker. So with that said, let me reduce this. Let me open my demo box. So here I have a bot that has been built using Node.js. I'm using ngrok to expose my bot in the internet, and as you can see, everything here is in the bot itself. To register my bot, I have an app package, and inside the app package, I have a similar to the Teams schema manifest that has some kind of additional information for the bot itself. But other than that, we are working together with the Teams team in order to ensure that this information will be part of the Teams manifest. But other than that, is nothing more than a Teams manifest itself. So once I have basically created my package, I go to my SharePoint site. Let me close this and refresh, and I go to my app catalog. I deploy the app, the package in the app catalog. This is my bot basically that I deployed. It looks a little bit different because it understands that it's not an SPFx kind of component. And then when I go to my dashboard, I basically refresh. I can edit. I can add my card. And basically, this is the card itself. Here it is. And this is my bot. This is my card. I can see in the debugger that I got a call. And then, for example, if we want to take a look a little bit at how it works, and let me zoom it before Vesa is asking. So basically, there is a bunch of properties that we have in order to be able to intercept the messages that we get from the dashboard itself. We have something called just like get quick view async. We have get card view async. We have get property pane. We have set property pane. And when you get these messages, you can basically react to this information. So for example, with the get quick view async here, I'm able to set up and create multiple views because we are supporting exactly the same functionality that you will support in an ACE. So one of those being having the ability to have multiple views, for example. So if I can create quick views here, so right now I have this quick view in the basic card view that when I click that, it gives me this title. So I can go back here and I can go to the basic view. I can click on the quick view. This is my quick view. Then I can simply go to my bot. I can go back here and I can say, hello, community. I can save, I can stop and restart. Then I go back to the dashboard. I add the 365, the card again. There it is. And then I click on the basic view and here it is. And everything changes. Now I have to do no changes because there is no publishing in the package. There is no client-side code. Everything is server-side. One of the cool features that we have enabled for the bot-driven ACEs is the ability to support third-party IDPs. So for example, if you want to logging by using a different IDP that is not Azure Active Directory, Google, Okta, you name it. We have hooked to the same flow that you have for Teams bots to be able to have kind of a magic code or token-based auth that you will be able to provide in order to be able to authenticate and use the bot. And it's completely inside the framework. You don't have to create any dialogues. The framework takes care of that for you. We are currently private preview, but we are launching a public preview this week. So expect a message from Vesa or anyone else from us to the community and to the internet when public preview will be available. We know that there are some features that are not still yet. So one of the reasons why we're doing public preview is because we want to get as much feedback as possible. For example, one of the things that we are still coding is the ability to send back and forward to all of this code the information that you may have set in the property bag so that you can, at any given time, you can understand that for that specific card instance, if you had some custom properties, which kind of custom properties the operator set and read those kind of information on any basically call. That's all, everything that I have.
Excellent. Thank you, Luca. Anyway, next we'll move to Paolo, and Paolo is all ready to go, and we're going to talk about extending SharePoint Framework application across Microsoft 365. We do have a great scenario, and that source code is fully open source, so it's available for you to reuse. Paolo, take it away.
Yes, thank you, Vesa. I prepared all of my Visual Studio Code with the proper zoom size, so hopefully it will go well.
Okay, oh, so. Come on. Overachiever.
So I'm going to explain you a few things about a demo that we shared a few weeks ago in Las Vegas and then in the European Collaboration Summit. That's me, so I want to save time. I just want to say you follow me on Twitter if you like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Everything else you can read it by yourself. And let's move to the actual content of this demo. So just to set the context, what we want to share with you and show you is a demo of a dashboard for an hypothetical Contoso Retail company, which works in the fashion market, because what else? I'm from Italy, so what else? And well, the idea is that Contoso Retail wants to have a dashboard to do monitoring of sales, revenues, and returns of products, as well as they want to be able to access some of this information from a mobile device. So we created a full demo solution where you can have a Teams-based UI through a personal app in Teams, as well as you will shortly see that we can also see this solution running in Outlook.com and in the Microsoft 365 portal, as well as with an extension for Microsoft Viva, which we cover in one of the future demos in these calls. So from a technological scenario, we are using SharePoint framework in this solution, and we are using SPFx just because nowadays, and since version 1.17.x of SharePoint framework, we can really easily host SPFx web parts, not only in SharePoint Online and in Teams, but also in the Microsoft 365 portal and in Outlook.com. And I said that this solution is a full solution that you can inspiration from, and in fact at the end of this presentation you will also see and have a link to download the source code of this demo from GitHub, and in this sample solution you can also find a backend infrastructure based on an Azure function that you can host wherever you like. And you will be able to see how you can define a proper architecture for a SharePoint framework solution to consume such a backend API. So stop talking and let's move to the actual demo. First of all, let me share with you how the demo looks like in the end user experience. So this is the Contoso Retail dashboard running in Teams. As you can see, this has a nice looking UI with a bunch of reports and graphics and charts to let people evaluate how the retail company is performing. And you can switch across different tabs in this personal application of Teams. In fact, you can see here we have an icon to activate our personal app, and we can go through all of the tabs that we created, and we can browse through the products that we have in our product inventory. It is interesting to notice also that this is a SharePoint framework solution, but it is multi-tab as any other team solution, and I will explain you how we did it. And you can also make it configurable even if it is a personal app. In fact, we made it possible to click on a setting or a gear icon and configure the app to work either with a set of mock data, just to speed up your learning process when you want just to play with this demo without any external dependency, or you can eventually disable the mock data and consume an external API, which will be the REST API hosted on an Azure function that I was talking about before. What is interesting is that this dashboard can also be used inside Outlook.com. And in fact, nowadays, if you click on the More Apps button, you can find additional applications, including your custom applications. And here you can see the Contoso Retail dashboard running inside the Outlook.com application. So this is, I think, really powerful because your end users can use your application wherever they are more comfortable to work with. And in fact, the same happens if they are in the Office portal or in the Microsoft 365 portal. So if they go to www.microsoft365.com and they click on the apps, right here, they can still find the same application, and they will be able to see inside the wireframe of the Microsoft 365 portal the same app running with exactly the same set of functionalities. So this is really, really powerful. So Now, last thing I want to show you through the browser, and then I will switch to Visual Studio Code. As you can see, this demo is deployed in the app catalog of my tenant. As you can see right here, this is the application. And from here, from the modern and new UI of the app catalog, we can easily see that this application can be executed on SharePoint, on Teams, and does also have an extension for Viva Connections, which I will not cover in this demo, but eventually in a future demo. So let me switch to Visual Studio Code and let's start talking about how we created this solution. But first of all, it is a regular SharePoint framework solution. So you simply do yo@Microsoft/SharePoint and you do the scaffolding of your solutions. Once we have done that, you can create as many web parts as you like in your solution. For example, and let me briefly switch back to the UI. You can see here we have 3 tabs, the home, the dashboard, and the inventory. And here we have precisely 3 web parts, the retail dashboard, retail home, and retail inventory, which are the 3 tabs that we see in the Teams app solution or in the Outlook or Office portal solution. Let's focus on one of them because it's all the same story for all of them. For example, the home one. In the home web part, we just have a really regular SharePoint framework web part. And inside this web part, we render a React component which will do the actual rendering of the UI of our tab inside of the personal app. What is interesting, however, is that in the manifest, we declare that the supported hosts are not only the SharePoint web part hosting model, but also the Teams personal app and the Teams tab. And okay, in this one, we also have the SharePoint full page. But what really matters for our demo is that we are going to support the hosting of this web part inside Microsoft Teams as a Teams personal app. Then inside the Teams folder that you get scaffolded in every SharePoint framework solution that you create with the Yeoman generator for SharePoint framework, you also have the Teams folder in which you can create a manifest file for Teams. That's what we did here. So here I'm using version 1.16 of the Teams manifest. And in this one, aside from the definition of the icons that I want to use and the description and name for my custom Teams application, I also have the static tabs section. And in this one, I have the 3 tabs, which represents the home, the dashboard, and the inventory tabs of my personal app. And as you can see right here, every single static tab does have a URL, which is dynamic based on the hosting tenant. But at the very end, in the right part of the URL, there will be a component ID, which will be provided as a query string parameter to the Teams hosted app.spfx file. And this ID is nothing more than the GUI that we have in the web part. For example, let's still focus on the home one. Here we have the unique ID of my web part. So basically in this manifest file, I'm simply declaring that every single tab with its own entity ID, which is the part we see right here when we browse to any of the tabs in my personal application, I want to render one web part or the other or yet another one. So that's really simple. Once you create such kind of manifest.json file, you can create a zip file, including the 2 icons and the manifest. You can call it Teams SPFx app.zip. And when you will do the bundle and package of your SharePoint framework solution, and then you will upload it into the app catalog, the server-side infrastructure of SharePoint framework will be able to understand that there is a custom zip file with a custom manifest and will use it to do the actual provisioning of the Teams application inside the Teams catalog of apps to make your application available in Teams and also and automatically in Outlook.com and Office.com. So the whole process is, I think, really straightforward. You simply create your web part, you configure a manually defined manifest, you create the zip file, you deploy and package the solution and upload it to the app catalog. And when you will do that, you simply say, okay, make it available in Teams, which means in the app catalog, when you select any of the solution, you can do the add to Teams, or you can simply select to sync the application to Teams when you upload it the first time into the app catalog. So that's the very basic story. And I think it is a really powerful story. Now, that said, let me dig into the demo a little bit more, and let me explain you why something like 5 minutes ago I said that this is a solution that you should take inspiration from. And the reason why is that this is not just, let me say, a fake demo that you can use just to show that you can do something nice, you know, but it is actually a real demo of something that you can do in your real production environment with a proper architecture definition. In fact, let me go back to Visual Studio Code and let me dig again into the home web part now with a little bit more of details. For example, in the on init of my web part, I rely on a pattern that we have in SharePoint Framework, which allows us to have a set of service classes that we want to use to consume external services or functionalities. And in the solution, you will find a services folder in which you can see we have an abstract definition of a setting service, which we can use to load and save the settings for our personal application. Maybe you know, maybe not, but I'm going to tell you that when you create a static tab in Teams, that static tab is not by default configurable. And that's the reason why in Teams we have the configurable tabs, which are those that you use in a chat or in a channel. And then we have the static tabs, which are those that are by default not configurable. However, in this demo, you can see how you can still make it configurable. And in fact, as I showed you, you have a gear icon that you can press, and you can configure some settings, whether you are in Teams or in Outlook or wherever else you are hosting your solution. How do we do that? Well, we have an abstract setting service, and we have a concrete implementation of the setting service where we use PnP.js, which is, like always, really useful and powerful. And with PnP.js, we simply rely on the storage entities that we have at the tenant level, so that we store inside the tenant the settings for our personal application, which also means that we have in this sample the experience of an administrator who can configure the personal app with the settings, which will be shared across all of the users. What I mean is that an administrator like I am right now will have the gear icon and will be able to configure the personal app. Any other user who is not an administrator will simply get the personal app properly configured with the settings defined by the administrator. And to do that, we use an external service, this one, the setting service, which will simply rely on the service scope pattern of SharePoint Framework, so that in the web part we can say, please, dear SPFx context, dear because we are friends, dear SPFx context, through the service scope, please let me consume the setting service. I will get back an instance of the setting service, and I will use it to load or to save the settings. And the same happens for the service that we use to load the actual data that we show. So, for example, we can say if we want to use mock data, so in the settings we define to use mock data, we rely on a fake retail data service instance. Or if we want to use real data, we use the retail data service, which will rely on an actual REST API, which we are going to consume from our application. But we don't have any of the complexities of consuming the REST API inside the web part, but actually inside an external service that we rely on. And this is a better architecture if you think about that, because you can share this kind of service across multiple web parts, as we are doing right here, where we share the same services in the dashboard, in the inventory, and in the home. So this is just to give you an idea of how you should define and structure the architecture of your solution. Then, in the retail home React component, which is the one in charge of rendering the actual UI of our home tab, we use the dashboard component, which is provided by PMP in the EMP React controls for SPFx. And this dashboard control gives you all the plumbing out of the box ready to be used to create a dashboard so that you can simply focus on implementing every single widget that makes up your dashboard. So in my demo, again, this is the return volume is a widget, the current inventory is another widget, and so on and so forth. Every single widget is just based on a dedicated React component that we can share across multiple tabs if needed. So again, we have a modular architecture based on a bunch of React components in a hierarchy of components. And what we do whenever we create any of these components is to provide them the actual instances of the data service and of the setting service so that they know how to do and what to do with those services in order to read and write data and to render data in our render. So this was just to give you an idea of what you can do when you want to create a real solution in SharePoint Framework with a proper architecture. You can find the solution on the samples gallery that we were talking about at the beginning of this meeting. And in the next slide that I'm going to show you before closing, you can also find a QR code if you want to go straight there without writing the URL. So in the upper link, you have the demo source code. In the lower link, you have a blog post that was written by Vesa a few months ago, which explains you the details about what we have just seen from a hosting perspective or a SharePoint Framework web part in Teams, Outlook.com, and Office.com. And I think that's all for me as well. So thank you, and back to you, Vesa.
Excellent, excellent, really, really cool. Good to see the crowd going wild as well. So let me actually move on my screen. So that is great. Awesome demos, Marc. Awesome demo, Luca. Awesome demo, Paolo. Really, really cool stuff. Brilliant samples and clarification, and we are on fire, as we can see from the chat. Now, next week on 13th of June, Fabian, which is going to be hosting the call. I will be actually on a quick family vacation next week, so I will not be here, but we'll have Marc to continue the storyline with Microsoft Syntex and how actually the Microsoft Loop application is powered or is using Microsoft Syntex for powering itself. That's a really cool example of how we use things in the first-party applications, but you can take advantage of the same things. Then we have Lan Li and Kishore Subedi talking about the introduction to Power Automate Copilot, and Paolo Pialorsi is going to continue showcasing that sample from today. And this time, we haven't updated, that's the demo title. It's going to be about the Viva connection cards, which are in the integration with that Microsoft Teams app. But that's on 13th of June. If you like this call and like the things what we're doing, please let us feedback. If you don't like something, please let us know as well. Your feedback is truly super valuable for us. So please share your input and feelings about the call and how we can improve. Now, the recording of this one will be available within 24 hours at Microsoft 365 and Power Platform Community YouTube channel. Subscribe there. Easiest way to follow up on things as happens. You can reach us to LinkedIn, community/LI, and the next call is on 13th of June. And all of the calls in the community calls URL. But thank you, everybody, for today. Awesome demo. Thank you for joining. Great engagement in the chat as well. We'll be in touch. Stay safe. Have a great rest of the week, and see you in the next call. Bye-bye.